Hey everyone, I'm Trent Kusters, co-founder and studio director at League of Geeks, and you're listening to The Game Maker's Notebook. Today I've been chatting with Klaus Lyngeled and Olov Redmalm of Moonhood. They're the creators of The Midnight Walk, a cozy horror, VR, and also standard format game where it is perhaps one of the best executions I've seen of the stop motion / claymation aesthetic in games that we've seen. It's just stunning. And the level of effort they've gone into, I mean, every model in the game was physically made in the real world and scanned in and animated. Just incredible stuff. But of course, we talk about their early career in games. We talk about how they met at a job fair. We talk about Klaus working at Shiny Entertainment with Dave Perry over at Laguna Beach before he was shipped home to found his own studio, which was Zoink Games, where the two of them came together and their collaborative partnership began. We speak about their catalog of games that led them throughout Zoink Games. It seems like if you look through that catalog, like there was a path that was leading both of them in this kind of iterative collaborative process that they're doing together towards the Midnight Walk. And then we talk about the Midnight Walk. We talk about storytelling process between these two, which is incredibly unique with the both of them being artists and some of this being literal hand sculpted models. We talk about unique mechanics in the game, things like closing your eyes as a game mechanic. Yes, actually your eyes, using eye tracking to close your eyes as a game mechanic. We talk about cozy horror, and Olov especially talks at length about the tricks and the illusions and the tools that they have to keep players in the right place, whether they're in that cozy element of something like from a Ghibli film or whether they're in one of those darker moments like you would find in the depths of a Tim Burton film or something. So without further ado, I'll let you off the leash and straight into this conversation. Here is Klaus and Olov from Moonhood.
Over Moon Mountain.
The dark itself is the key. All it needs is a little spark, and then I get what I need.
The sun away.
Klaus, Olov, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah,
really excited. Klaus, I was saying before we started, it was many years ago, but we were in the Vote to Play campaign for PlayStation for our games back in the games over 10 years ago now. Games that we had. Yours was Zombie Vikings. Mine was Armello.
That's true. Yeah, that was with Zoink Games. Yeah, that was... It was a fun time. Also, we didn't win. I think
we didn't win either.
we lost. No, I know. So we
lose together. And two of the losers are here.
I think it was some game with Ubisoft who won. So I'm not.
Yeah, I think it was like Human Fall Flat or something like that. It was a game went on to be massive after that. So I think the people spoke, but also I don't think Vote to Play happened after that again. So.
No,
it was a really odd thing that we happened to get a chance, a big PlayStation promotion. We got selected and then they never did again.
Yeah, but it was good. It was a fun idea. I liked it, but it was also a bit stressful. Yes.
Well, hey, thank you both for joining us today. Really excited to dive into this. The Midnight Walk is such a special game, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about it. But as we usually do, we're going to take this all the way back to the start. And I'm keen to hear about young Klaus and Olov and how this kind of love for video games came about. So, Olov, and I know the two of you is evident within Midnight Walk as well. You're obviously not just game makers, you're makers. I don't even need to put something at the front of it. You're multidisciplinary artists here. So I'm keen to hear about some of those influences as well. So, Olov, let's start with you. What's the first memory that you have of video games and interfacing with them that you think might have put you on this path?
Well, we had a really old Macintosh, black and white screen image. Was the computer? It was. I was playing Civilization, I remember, and Warlords, and what else was it? Shuffle Puck with my siblings, and I remember my brother had found this program where you could insert images from the painting program and do a point and click game. So he had just learned some coding in school. I'm much younger than my siblings, so I was like maybe 6 or 7, and he sat with me and made a point and click game.
Oh, awesome. Were you was he making it for you, or were you kind of creative director, so to speak?
Yeah, I guess I got to be a creative director. Yeah, with him making images, and yeah, he was really supportive. Like, you come up with the story, you do the, and I often forget that story, but yeah, I guess that was my first game that I made together with my brother. But then that kind of went back into a box for a couple of years. I was mostly painting, going to art school, and then I played. Then we got a computer, a Windows with full color and everything, a PC with Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 that really caught my attention with the storytelling, and that you could create your own character and sort of shape the story yourself was just mind blowing to me, and made me really think about but how do they do this? And that's so impossible to work with it also in Sweden. I guess I gotta go to America and to do that, and do I have the chops to do that? But then I went to some art school, and I went to during gymnasium or high school.
It's like the final 2 years or the final year of high school in Sweden, right?
Yeah, or it's even later, I think. And in Swedish, it's gymnasium, but I'm not sure if it's the same in English.
I think you're what are you, from 15 to 19 or something like that?
Yes,
I'm
16,
right. Yeah,
16 years old. Yeah, I'm at art school, and I went to an exhibition where the art director for the Riddick games at Starbreeze was exhibiting some of his work. I bought something from him, a really cool clay mask that he had made. And when we were talking, he said, I expressed that I wish I could work with games. It seems so such a unique thing for you to do in Sweden. And I was like, no, it's really big in Sweden. It's everywhere. There are schools and it's super easy. You don't have to go anywhere. Yeah. So he gave me a lot of tips about different schools. And
lucky you.
Yeah. You had a whole different. I was a bit spoiled. That
all right,
way.
Pause there. Because this is a good place to stop if we're now getting into the uni life. Because now we'll jump over to Klaus. Tell me about your sort of upbringing with video games and your first memory of it, and sort of through your school years and everything. Do you have a first memory that you can think of, Klaus?
Yeah. I mean, I think really first memory was my granddad, who had a Pong or something like that. The little old, which I played at his house once. I think, and it broke pretty quickly. I can only remember we saw it once, and then a long time after that. Because I grew up in Denmark, actually. I'm Danish from the beginning, and then because my family had some problems and stuff like that, we had to move to Sweden. And so when I was in my teens, I had to move to Sweden. It was kind of a tough thing for me. So I got really introvert nerdy at that time, I think, and then it was hard.
Yeah.
Yes, and then it was hard to find friends, and so, and then I got I had some friends who had home computers, So for me, it was really. But I think the first thing was really in Sweden. You could also rent these Nintendo Super Nintendos for the weekends, basically. So instead of so at that time you could for example you could rent a video box, so you could rent the whole video player, and you could play it over the weekend. But you could also rent the actually Nintendo Entertainment System. So we would rent that, and we would just play it's crazy 24 hours on that. Try to finish Super Mario and stuff like that.
You're on a time limit, right? As soon as you get it back,
it was insane.
Other kid's going to wipe the cartridge.
Yeah. I think the parents are super happy with just leave them alone. They're gone now. Bad parenting. But then after a while, yeah, I got like an Atari ST was my first computer because I had friends who had that. But then I realized the friends I really wanted to, and that I got really friends with, had Amiga 500. So I had to switch to Amiga 500, which was like at that time in Sweden, it was like a fight between the Atari ST and the Amiga 500. It was so weird.
Right. That was the the Nintendo and Sega of the days, right? In the PC
yes,
world.
It's kind of like the nerd gangs against each other, you know. So I got the Amiga 500, and then I think the first thing you realize at that time was you pirate copied everything, you know. Like we would have these, we called them copy parties, where we meet up and we would just like swap floppy disks and just copy, you know.
Right.
Yeah, because there was no protection at all like that, and it was just insanely insane. So I had like, you know, you would buy 500 floppy disks and you would just copy everything you had, and then you would just try everything, you know, which was really fun too, because you would just basically go through all these games and which ones do I like, you know. So yeah, I started with that. Started playing trying a lot of video games that way, but then after a while, I got into something called a demo group. So basically, in Sweden, the Nordics, there's something called demo groups, which is basically people get together it was very big on the Amiga 500. You basically try to code it in a way or do art on it, code music and art together. It's kind of like a weird music video.
There was a big demo scene in Melbourne, actually.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you kind of know what it is. Yeah. It's hard to explain to people who doesn't understand it because it's so nerdy in a way. It's so weird.
It's creative and expressive, but it has this hardcore technological edge to it as well, right? Because the talent and required to actually pack this stuff in so small is just impressive.
It was like basically, how do I get the biggest scrolling font on the screen? You know, it's like, who cares? But that was like one challenge that everybody was trying to do, you know, or how do I get just like a rotating cube with tons of colors, you know, on the screen, you know? And of course, there was all these different ways to do it, and they were hacking the chipsets to do it different ways. And there was people who were playing music on the floppy drive at the same time they're doing that, you know. So that I got into that, but there was a friend of mine who was in the group quite early on who said, I'm thinking about making a video game, you know. So he was doing this little demo of a pinball game. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. And I said, we should make a game. So, and I was an artist already then. So a pixel artist basically in the group. So that's how I got into it. But yeah, the earliest was really, I was really focused on just the video games. It was really looking at all these Amiga games. And what I thought was interesting about that, because at that time there was nothing called indie, you know. That was a term that was developed later on. Everything was indie, you know. It was basically just two guys or one guy or a couple of people sitting down and just making a game, and that's how all the video games at that time was done, you know. Like that's how Peter Molyneux started. Molyneux, I don't know how to say his name, but you know, all these like big classic developers that became quite big. That's how they started, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we just had Julian Gollop on the podcast. We released that episode yesterday, I think, and similar story. You know, him and his brother just got together with some money from their dad, and you know, started putting floppy disks in plastic slips.
Yeah, I know. I had friends later on who basically did the same thing. We later on we did develop that game into something, and then we ended up signing with a British publisher, because that was where everything happened.
It was
England.
Big publishing in Britain in the time. Big,
we were there. But I had a friend who did the other way around, where they really found their own distributors, and you did, they printed their own boxes and everything like that. So
crazy.
So that's how, but for me, it was really looking at all the pixel games and looking at all these different types of games. There's so many different games that you could play on the Amiga. Strategy games, that's where you could play Civilization at that time, for example, like a very, very simple version. The Sims came out there too, very early version of it. No, not the Sims. SimCity it was actually. Sorry. Yeah. See, that's how old. And then I think for me, it was like you start, if you look at all those games, you also start to look at all types of different gameplays and types of different characters and how it's done. So in a way, I think subconsciously you start analyzing how they're made, you know, and what are they, you know, and what is it that makes them interesting, you know?
Yeah. That's maybe a good segue back to you, Olov, because you were mentioning you're chatting to this art director, right, from Starbreeze, and you're figuring out that there is something going on in the industry, and you're talking about, it sounds like they pointed you towards some game courses, but were you tinkering around at all with game art? Were you modding or anything, or were you kind of dipping your toes into art but just outside of the games field?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd always been interested in, I think, like a red line in my, like, whatever, like, I thought I was an artist, I thought I was a comic artist or a game developer, but I think my baseline is storytelling in different media, and I've done on hobby level, done short film, and when I went to school, and drew comics when I was little, and ever since, when I was going to study on after gymnasium or whatever it's called, I went to this fair where they had this event where they showed different schools, and there was this one that like I was looking for these educations that Axel Trovenius, the art director from Starbreeze, had tipped me about. He worked on Indiana Jones now, by the way.
Right. That crew are now a lot of those crew are now at Machine Games. Yeah.
So I was looking for those schools that he talked about at that fair. I didn't find any that sounded like a game developer school. But then I saw someone drawing some really cool samurais by this booth. It was a comic art school in northern Sweden. And there was a big list of like things that you can become if you study here. And one of them was concept artist. And I heard that like concept art, that's like you paint, but it's for video games. So that sounds like a good combo, so I went with that. I'd always enjoyed comics and storytelling, and you would be learning writing as well, dramaturgy, and all that stuff. And I had a great time, but I learned nothing about game development. The course I thought would be about painting concept art was he looked and sounded a lot like Nico Bellic from GTA 4, and he was like, his Photoshop course, and this is terrible, I can almost not say it, but he gave us photos of his ex-wife, and we had to paint away like zits or stuff, and that was like I can't believe that we have this.
This is happening.
That it happened.
Should we tell someone about this? Yeah.
I'm thinking
pressing
about
the fire alarm button underneath your desk. Yeah.
He would be like, he would say things like see you tomorrow if the sun rises. That is.
Wow.
It was like this. I couldn't tell if it was
guy.
a big. Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was like if it was he was doing a bit the whole time, or if it was dead serious, or a mix. But
just
but
like,
I learned
that cheery Eastern European affectation, right? Like
but I learned storytelling and drawing fast. A lot of even characters over and over again in different angles, and like storyboarding, which has been really useful now in game development. It's how I write my scripts. I draw the storyboards for the Midnight Walk. When Klaus and I discuss the story, I go to my corner and just draw a whole chapter in storyboards. And
so
then,
visualizing it is like just a big part of the process, even early on, to get it out. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And when we discuss animations and how just different scenes, it's in working with trailers for the game. Of course, storyboarding is very useful. And then comes the script.
When you learnt storyboarding in this course with your friend Nico Bellic, was there?
Oh, that was just for the record. There were other teachers.
Okay, good. They were
good stuff.
Okay, right. Well,
Nico Bellic is fine,
but
he taught me just retouching photos.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, when you learned this storyboarding, did it feel like something was unlocked? I mean, for you to lean on storyboarding for the rest of your time after that as like a way to tell your stories, and being a storyteller sort of coming into this, did it feel like you'd found an outlet to really kind of express yourself there when that happened? Were you familiar with storyboarding before the course, or?
Yeah, no, I was mostly familiar with comics. I loved to draw comics as a kid. It felt like because I would, like every other kid, I would watch shows and be like, how do they do this, and how do they make things move? And I have so much to tell. I've always loved theater also, and done hobby theater. I do voice acting for games and our games mostly. and so I had all these different expressions I wanted to get out there. I wanted to shape stories, and I didn't know how. And I remember feeling, well, being like 4 and 5 and feeling so frustrated drawing this crappy drawing on a paper, and knowing that it wasn't enough. That it was, I didn't like. I wanted so much more, and there was something like I wanted things to move, and in comics, in a way, is doing that by yourself. I could
it's quite
make
dynamic,
things
right?
move, and the reader is making things move by looking at the images, and it's a good. It was my way to do my completely own thing on my own, and definitely it's always been something I can always come back to, and then and there it also, because I'd always been drawing comics as a kid, and now I had all this theory behind it, and I just thought
a tool set now, right?
Yeah, so fascinating just how you can convey the feeling of a vast landscape, but in the confines of this paper. Like you have all these, for instance, you have maybe these squares showing different scenes, but then behind all those squares, maybe there's an environment that leaks out into the edges of the paper, and that gives a sense of that there's a whole world, like a spaciousness outside those shots and stuff like that I found really fascinating, like little cliffhangers, and learning all of those things that made storytelling that much more available and easier.
We'll swing back to Klaus in a second once we reach the point where you got into games, but I'm interested, you said that you didn't actually learn much game art in this course. Did you then go and study more specifically, or did you sort of just dive into game art itself? How did you find, or did you just launch into a career in games and figure it out along the way?
So like during studying comics, it became more and more apparent that I'm not going to survive as a comic artist. It's great. I'm learning a lot of great stuff.
But you always tell me that you had this period when you came out of school and basically you had to take this really crappy job. So it was kind of like depressing job as
home service.
Right.
I mean, it was nice that you did that. Looking after people in their homes, like a carer, so to speak.
I had a bit of a depression when I realized I would be working as a comic artist. It was like our last year of school, and I was like, now I have to, like, what am I going to do? We have our big sort of like a master's project. I'm going to do like an 8-page comic pitch, and this is it. If I don't land this and like become the next Frank Miller, I'm not going to be able to work like this. So I guess I'll become the next Frank Miller. And so I drew this. I had a really expensive, really fine sort of Japanese pen nib that I had imported with my very limited resources. And I was finally, I'd done other sketches. I'd always been good at graphite, but then I was going to start inking this comic, and I started realizing over and over, like I was using this light board to ink the page on top of the sketch, and I did a try after try, and I started to realize, wait, I don't know how to ink like the big ones do. I'm not good enough, and I just started over and over, and I got really frustrated. I remember I broke the pen nib because like I was adjusting the light table, and the pen nib broke. It was so sad, and I just nope, I give up. I'll never draw again. And I had this period where I just no.
Olov.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Oh, man.
Really dark.
Well, at least you're a proper artist now. You've gone through a depression. Now you're a proper artist, right?
Yeah. So I but after like a month later, I picked up a sketchbook and I started drawing on my own. Like, no, I'm not going to put like a unnecessary amount of pressure on me. I'm just going to do what I know I can do and settle for that. And then I found my way back to a healthy relationship with art again. And but I started working in home service while figuring things out. But I knew all of my friends. Like, I had so many friends in comic school that were of course in the same situation, that also had been pondering game development, and they had heard of this school called the Game Assembly, which is in Malmö, and it's still going on. And one of the, like, I would say that one of the best game development.
Yeah, it's one of the best schools in the country for sure.
Yeah,
wow.
They have really great.
Is it in Malmö, or where is it? Or
yeah, it's in Malmö. Yeah.
Okay.
But then I think they have one in Stockholm also now. So they sort of opened up different branches of it right now. Yeah,
wonderful.
And they really, really great, and they have really great meet and greets at the end of the the school where all the companies come to a big locale, and you can sort of speed date different companies. So I went there. Long story short, I applied for the school and went there for 2 years, and that was time for the meet and greet. I learned all the technical bits. I started honing in on becoming a 3D character artist. Did some of that. I thought I would work at a big AAA studio because that was the cool thing to do. Everybody was talking about being a character artist at this, and we did all of these game projects. 8 of them during the course of these 2 years is what. So there's a programmer school, level design school, and a game art school, and we all get together and make these game projects. And I would be the one who I kind of dropped. I was an artist, and I kind of dropped the art to talk about the story more. I like it. We didn't have a story. Like a story discipline within the school, but I had always been interested in that. So I came back to that and did some voice acting for a game project when no one asked me to, and did some of the writing and I guess I did creative direct most of our projects there because no one else wanted to, and that's kind of what I shaped my my portfolio around, even though everyone advised against it. But I did apply as a 3D artist, but also I had like some of my comics that I'd been working on the side during home service times, dark times, and what were you gonna say?
No, go ahead. I'll tell you after.
Yeah. and so I did do the 3D shtick, the 3D portfolio, but also on the side a little bit of my storytelling. And shaped my portfolio and personal letter around that I enjoy storytelling. So I was at this meet and greet. I talked to a bunch of different developers, and I was really nervous, as everybody was. I went to the cafeteria, took a break, and my really great principal, Ann-Sofie Sydov, who's a really like a really powerhouse for game development, not only in Sweden, but she's very, very active all around.
She's a really fun lady.
Yeah, very powerful. she just like came up to me like, "What are you doing?" Like, "Taking a break. I've talked to people." "Sure you have. There's someone you need to meet." And she took me by the shoulders and like, and pulled me out of my nervous breakdown and put me inside of. Let me rephrase that.
I hope he doesn't put me inside. That would be horrible because I know what you're gonna say. Go ahead.
So she grabbed my shoulders.
Right. And go ahead, Olov. Where are you gonna?
We have a lot to talk about this.
And she introduced you to.
Yeah. So she introduced me to Klaus, and she put me in front of Klaus. And he was showing me. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that it's funny because I know why I really liked your portfolio, because it was really because that's why I was running Zoink, and as you can see, I still got actually Zoink.
Oh, the Zoink tattoo! He's holding his arm up with the Zoink tattoo. Great.
Yeah. So Zoink was my previous company before Moonhood, obviously, which I had for 20 years. We'll talk more about that. But it was just funny because the whole thing about why I really liked your portfolio was just because of your drawings, really. And I didn't really care much about your 3D portfolio, actually. And I think that was, I think says something about also the way I was picking. I think it's super important that you can draw before you can, if you're an artist, you should be able to draw. Even if you're a 3D artist, I think you should start with learning how to draw, because it's such a good tool to use all the time. And the way me and Olov, going back to what we talk about, the way we're working together is really, drawing is kind of like our language in a way, a lot of times.
Yeah, it's a language you both speak, right?
Yes, yeah. And we can talk to each other through that, because there's a lot of emotions that are so hard to express in words. And I always quite often talk about that. I think language is actually something that holds us humans back right now. I think actually language is a bit too, it's not good enough, actually. I want to be able to express emotions. Yeah, it's too primitive and it's too slow, actually, So I can talk a lot about that. But basically...
That's his telepathy.
Yes, I want to have that. I want to go inside you, Olov. So I think that's... it was so cool that you had that whole portfolio before that. That was like really what I think got me interested in it. And also art director Andreas Bayer, who was working with us together on Faye, which was we were presenting Faye at that time.
You show me this really beautiful, the early stages of Fee on the screen with this really abstract kind of Nordic forest. You play as this flying squirrel, and it was just like completely different from anything that I had my eyes on, and I kind of was like something in me resurfaced. I was like, oh yeah, I remembered a bit of myself after this kind of very hectic, crunching learning game development, and just getting so affected about everybody around you, and like, this is what you're supposed to be. You can't be a concept artist. Nobody becomes a concept artist. It's so hard. And then I see this thing, and also Flipping Death that you were working on this more comedic game, and these two very different styles. And and when we were talking, and I came weeks after I came to visit, you show me all like the team that was very colorful, and also I realized I'd be doing all this different stuff, like drawing storyboards, bouncing script, building environment art. There was so much opportunity for growth and trying out different things. And I got actually an offer also. I got an offer from Klaus, and which we're grateful for to this day. And then there was a creative assembly in Britain where I would be a 3D character artist for a AAA game, for some Warhammer game, I think. And I was like, Dad loves Total War. So there was still a part with me.
Like your dad
dad loves Total War.
He's not referring to you, Klaus. Yeah,
I was just, I was going to say that.
No, another daddy. I was thinking that Dad is gonna be proud of me if I work. Yeah, like I want to make Dad proud. Like there was still this instinct to make other people happy, and I went to him, and I was like, "But come on, the way you talk." He told me, like, "Are you kidding me? The way you're talking about Zoink and describing what you'll be doing there, it's obvious this is what you really want." And so of course I went with Zoink, and
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's pause there, and then you can dive in. Please go for it. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, Trent, because you talked about Zombie Vikings. We actually, it was funny because inside Zombie Vikings, there was actually a hidden demo of the game Fae.
Really?
So, yes. So if you would eat there was a special mission you could do with the zombies, and you could eat these mushrooms, and you ate the mushrooms, and then you would actually play our sort of like first demo of Fae inside it, and it was
so cool.
And the character would come out like, "Oh my god, I was like this little squirrel jumping around. It was so weird. I don't know what's happening, man."
Because it kind of changes the whole format of the game as well, right? That's
incredible. Oh yeah, it's totally different thing. It was a 3D game. It was so different.
Speaking of Zombie Vikings, while I was studying the game assembly, we're starting to like get ready for meet and greet. We saw the first trailers, I think, of Zombie Vikings, where it had just come out, and I was sitting with some friends. They were like, "Oh well, this style looks amazing," and I was like, "Oh, but I'm going to be this AAA artist, not an indie game developer." And I remember that moment. But
yeah. It has all of your games, Klaus. So, such striking visual style. So let's wind it back, because we paused on you to go back to see how Olov found his way into games, but obviously he's found his way into games when you're halfway through your journey there, right? At Zoink, at the studio that you'd founded. So talk to us a little bit about your first days getting into the industry, your first sort of jobs. As you mentioned, you were making a couple of games on your own, but your sort of first proper job, and then and then founding of Zoink, and take us away.
So basically what happened was that I was tinkering around with those Amiga games. We basically started, the demo group had like me and a guy called Daniel started making this little game, and we continued working on it for almost like 3 or 4 years. And it became this pinball game, which I was doing when I was in gymnasium, when I was in high school.
Oh, cool.
So high school, and then I tried to get into art school actually, but I couldn't get in because I didn't have good enough grades. So, which is like, okay,
not good enough grades for
art school. Art school. That's what I was thinking.
No, I didn't actually. I didn't have you had to have a 5, and I only had a 4. Or something like that. So it's a 5.
They don't even open the folio cover if you have a 4. They're like, "No, we don't care what's in there. Just keep that to yourself."
I mean, the thing is that you have to go back to, this is Sweden, 90 something. The 90s, early 90s, and one thing that was really bad about I think was really bad about Sweden was that there was really no comics in Sweden at the time. There's really not a big thing. If you compare it to France, for example, my wife is French, so I've seen what she grew up with.
Right.
We watched, like, I could honestly, so weird, I could watch cartoons once a week. Once a week on Fridays at some point, and the rest of it was like these, because Sweden is a very socialist country. We saw a lot of like cool stuff, puppet stuff and things like that, but it was all from Romania and Bulgaria and all these like East country things. Yeah.
And I think the reason is, by the way, that because we were marked as sort of terrorist state, I think, because the president then, or not a terrorist state, but that we were untrustworthy because we were socialist.
We were expensive to import programs from US. Yeah, I mean, the country has changed a lot since then and everything, but it was it's very different. But really, it was hard I couldn't find any comic book shops or anything like that. You had to go to a big city, or not even there. It's hard to find it. But we started making the video game, and I continued. I didn't get into art school, so I was going to become like a physics and math teacher.
Yeah, right, cool.
So because my physics teacher was really impressive, I loved him, so I really wanted to be like as cool as him. I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm crazy. So I started studying to be a teacher, and the first year was just math. So I did so that's a university basically. But I was still making the video game. But we could finish it off, and then, as it was finishing off, we got a contract, and we started making a little bit of money in that. And then I just basically dropped off school and said, I'm gonna make video games. We're gonna continue with this company doing this thing.
Awesome.
There was a company called Liquid Design.
Why do I hear a badass guitar riff when you say that?
I don't know. It's because I have
a skateboard.
And then at the same time, which is so funny, as it connects to what we're doing today, because basically I heard about some other guys in a city close to where I lived who was also doing a pinball game or video games. And I met some guys there just for like the weekend and hanging out with them, partied with them. And that was actually a guy called Oscar Berman. And Oscar Berman today is our head of our publishing company that is publishing this game we're doing today.
Wow, amazing!
He runs Fast Travel Games.
Cool.
So he's been like my almost childhood friend, or at least I knew him since he was 19 years old for like 30 years, So we've sort of been working on and off during our careers. So I met with those guys, and they were doing also games. And basically, it was really weird because what they did was they had an apartment, and they all lived in the apartment, and almost like a what do you call it, collective or something like that. So basically, cooked together, they lived together, and they coded their games together and made the games together.
That's awesome! Like an early game dev artist collective. That's great.
Yes, it was pretty much exactly that. It can't be more indie than that. It's like insanely indie. It's like honestly, they didn't get any money, so they got like I guess unemployment checks or something like that, and they poured all the money together, and they basically bought like big sacks of flour and baked bread, or just like tons of rice and cheap stuff, So I moved in with them in an apartment below them, and we started sort of like a same thing together with them, and then quickly that turned into a company. We got some investments, and then suddenly that whole thing sort of started rolling, where it actually becomes like a real company, But it was pretty rough at the beginning. And then from there, I kind of understood that because we were still doing pinball game that came out. It did really well. It didn't sell well. None of my games ever sell really well, but it got really good grades. Yes, it's still rated like in the top 5 Amiga games right now. So it's pretty
that's
high.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I was looking at it the other day, and it's together with like, here's Monkey Island, and here's that game. It's called Slam Tilt, if you want to check it out.
Slam Tilt.
Yeah. So Slam Tilt is a thing where if you push your pinball table too many times, it goes slam tilt, and you basically lose all your coins. You have to reset it totally. So
love it.
Tilt is something you're allowed to do, but slam tilt is not allowed to do. So yeah.
Well, breaking the law.
And so basically I kind of realized it's like a lot of the stuff that we're doing at that company was called Unique Development Studios. So that was like Liquid Design and Unique Development Studios, which I kind of joined. It was a bigger group of people, but I didn't really feel like they were doing that interesting games, and I was always fighting to do something more creative. And I played a game called MDK from America, which I thought was like amazing, from Shiny Entertainment. Shiny Entertainment had also done Earthworm Jim, which I thought was amazing too, which is like this really cartoony game, very much character design. And I was just like, I'm going to apply for them. Why not? I'll just be crazy and send over my stuff, And I just sent a floppy disk with some stuff, and they actually emailed me back. I think there was emails at that time. There must have been, yeah. It's this old, and I got a phone interview, and I got a job. It was like insane because I was like, 22 years old at that time, or 22 or 23 or something like that. And I got a job in America.
And Shiny was a big deal then. I remember it was like a David Perry's big studio, right?
David Perry's huge at that time. It was like he was kind of like famous, for what he did. And the place was like insane because it was like a little cool studio on the beach in Laguna Beach, which is like I moved from North Köping in Sweden, which is like almost like you come from Russia, basically.
Let's just say the days are a little warmer,
Yes, you moved to Russia into a studio where it's like this little cool studio, and it was really like, I think there was 20 people at the studio, not even, it was less than that, There were surfboards inside the studio. People would go boogie boarding in the afternoon or lunch, and I think I went, my salary went quadrupled basically like that.
Wow, just instantly.
It was so funny. I had an interview with the guy. That's how it was run. Like the guy was like, producer's really interesting character. There's a whole story to him too. And I said to him, so what about your salary? What are you thinking about? And I was like, and I was like, okay, I know it's a lot higher with it. So I took my salary and I doubled it. I was like, I'm thinking about this. He's like, no, okay, don't say that. Say this instead.
You got an inside man. I love it. That's great.
And I was like, okay then, sure, that's what I want.
That's what I meant. That's definitely what I meant. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I got the job and I went over there. I never went to the US, and it was just, I got picked up in a limo. So that's how it was.
Wow.
The whole thing was crazy,
Some wild stories out of that era of video games.
Yes, yes, very much,
Yeah, a lot of nerds with a little bit too much money for sure. Definitely.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
So how long were you at Shiny for?
So I was about there almost 4 years.
Yeah, cool. What'd you work on?
So I started out, so I got hired. So what the thing was, I really wanted to work at something like the MDK guys, because I thought they were amazing. Just when I arrived, they found out they started their own studio and left. So whole team had just left. So I was like, okay. Oh. So I started out with as a character designer and character modeler on something called Sacrifice.
Yep. What year was that, if you excuse me?
Oh, sorry?
What year was that, roughly?
Could it be 97, maybe? 96, 97?
Right. I was 8 years old playing, or 9 years old maybe, playing Sacrifice.
Because you played that. You told me that you played it. Yeah.
I love the style. Right. So that was so creative and so weird. I still remember that, like all the weird kind of, it was like
totally
nothing
weird.
I'd seen before.
Yeah.
But it was super hard, so I had to give up. But I remember that game so well because of the style. And so meanwhile, you were out there doing the
Oh yeah, I know this game. Yeah.
It's one of the first sort of like 3D strategy games. What they really wanted to do, like where you really could jump into the characters and control them directly, but could also zoom out. This guy had made his own engine. This was the time when you made your own engines. The whole thing was built from scratch. He had made his own engine with landscape engine, and then used that together with this other sort of technology where you could do characters. So
very cool.
Yeah, so that was really fun time. I mean, I worked on that, but then I quickly also started working. They needed this. I think they were very happy with me, so I started working on Wild 9, and then that was really interesting too, because that was kind of like their next Earthworm Jim, but it didn't turn out as well, but they were trying to do that. Wild 9, RC Stuntcopter, and then Messiah, which also very interesting to work on. I don't know if Messiah was a pretty big deal at that time. A very hyped game.
Yeah, I remember the hype.
And then in the end, I worked on Enter the Matrix. That was sort of at the end of it.
Hell yeah, that's my shiny entertainment game. That was like that
Yeah.
blew my mind playing that game. That was so
I actually,
cool.
I have some really fun stories from there. I got to, so I ended up, so Enter the Matrix was basically, the idea was really that the Matrix came out and it was a big
Mhm.
deal, of course. And
Yep.
then the guy who made the special effects got an Oscar for that. So he started his own sort of like special effects company up in Oakland, outside San Francisco. And the idea was that we were going to make a game that was in between the first and the second. So there was kind of like a story in between that. So the first time they were really working together, and they were supposed to work together with the Wachowski brothers and really have all the story together and all that. It was very, very interesting. And because we were doing the character designs we actually got to flew up one day where they were going to 3D scan Keanu Reeves, so they was going to 3D scan him. So I came in as like, here's the game guy who's going to take some photos of you, I was there with our producer, and first we waited for I think we waited for 3 or 4 hours for Keanu Reeves to turn up. He didn't turn up, but then he turned up with a giant beard, of course, all rough, so they had to shave him and stuff like that. And and they all, yes,
You
Did you get to shave him?
Now that's a bucket list item right there.
So I didn't get to do that, but they had it. Somebody did that, of course.
Somebody
And it was so funny because they were so, you never really get to see that, but they were like so running around him like he was a king,
Yeah, I know. It's so interesting when you meet people of that kind of a level of fame, and especially like of importance in the area where, they're meant to be, like you say, a movie stars rocked up to do a thing, and there's like these, like those little cleaning fish that hang around sharks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was like, and I thought he was joking, but he said like, oh, what do you want? Do you need anything? Oh, maybe a margarita. And I was like, God, he's not going to get a drink now, is he? No, they actually got him a margarita. They made a margarita, So, okay, cool, So that's how he got into his style. I don't know what he needed. And then, so I was like, I couldn't put up my photo equipment there because there's no room for it. And of course, it's the game artist. Who cares about this guy, So I had to put up my photo equipment inside this, there was a toilet. It was like a weird building, but there was an oversized toilet, or bathroom, where there's all these stalls that I could put up my photo equipment there. The problem was that the whole room was painted this kind of salmon color, Right. So I got these photos of Keanu Reeves where he's tinted nicely pink, He's
got a nice blush about him, yeah.
Yes. And then he was also running around. He was walking around there. Kids had to put this bodysuit on that was really tight, so he looked like a. So that was interesting. That was really fun. Cool. But that was kind of like
that game had some star power attached to it. Remember, Jada Pinkett Smith was one of the there was the lead character, right? And Anthony Wong.
I think so. Yeah. So I was working on it for 6 months. I was kind of in pre-production on it. And cool. And then I left because already then the thing was I had the way I was there for 4 years, but I really missed creating my own games.
Yep.
So I was thinking, okay, I'm really, so at home, I was developing my own sort of idea or pitch or IP of a game. And then I started pitching that around outside the US to a lot of publishers. At the same time, I was working at Shiny. Yeah. And of course, that was kind of frowned upon, of course, to do that. And then at some point, I didn't know I was, but I was apparently pitching to one of David Perry's best friends. And of course, he called David Perry and I think one of you guys, Klaus, has pitched me a game. Like, what? So I got a kind of angry, I wouldn't say I got fired, but I was told, maybe it's better that you leave if that's what you want to do.
Yeah. Go and do that thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So in the end, I left and I was like, I'm going to go back to Europe. And I couldn't start a company in the US because of visa things. I had a specialty visa. So but I met my wife over there.
Right. You took her back to Europe with you?
Yeah. So we moved to France first and tried to do it because she's from France. But now we live in Sweden. Yeah. So we've been together for also 25 years. Yeah.
Congratulations. How long were you in France for?
A year, I think. And then we kind of realized it was a bit too tough for me to start a company there. It was with language and structures and all sorts of stuff. So
also, they're far too talented over there as well.
Yes, I couldn't compete with them.
That competition, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the art. Like going back again, like looking at the comic books from France. I love going to comic book stores in Paris. Is like the best.
Yeah, right.
And even the children books, like because at that time I had young kids, and I was like, the kids books, they're not made for the kids, they're made for the grown-ups, they're like art pieces,
Yeah, it's just incredible the like quality of art they were putting out in that country, and it's because it's like steeped just culturally in every part of their upbringing and everything. I mean,
and it started so long ago, so they've just been building on top of it.
Of course, yeah. I remember it would always be like all the red alarms would fire and everything. And the rare occasion, it's happened only a few times at League of Geeks, when someone would apply for a job at League of Geeks and they'd studied at Gobelins.
Oh yes, that's cool. It's amazing.
Like, oh my god, someone from Gobelins has applied to the company. Quick!
I used to go in to look at their I used to look at
sort of thing.
Yes, all the showcase, like those like the short movies they're making there. Insane.
Yeah, wild stuff.
Yeah, really is. Yeah.
All right, so you're back at Zoink. Let's talk about those early years of Zoink before you found a young bright-eyed Olov. Or what were you up to? What was it like getting started?
So the project that I started, I was pitching over in the US, was called Core, and it was I really loved the idea. It was a video game, and you have to think about at the same time, it was kind of like Crash Bandicoot that came out, and it was pretty big, and then of course Ratchet and Clank just came out. A friend of mine actually worked at Ratchet and Clank, and a lot of the games were around that kind of theme, or around there, like it was kind of a bit more kid friendly in a way.
Yeah, it was the era of the console platformer, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the game we were doing was I invented was like a game about this robot that had like these 3 kids inside it and a dog, and whoever took over the robot suit would sort of change it, And
cool. Very cool.
And it was I already at that time I was kind of like a little bit inspired from Nightmare Before Christmas and the little Lock, Stock, and Barrel, the little funny characters there in the bathtub. I wanted to have these gritty little kids, So that was the first project that I did. It was hard to start it, so I ended up actually going back to my old company UDS and developing it together with them. But I still had Zoink as like a sort of like, so it was just me basically selling them, here's the project. We got it started together and we developed it. And again, Oscar actually there, he was the producer on this project. So
cool.
He was,
right.
And then we did that for a while, and this was for the first Xbox, And then we got into trouble. It was a problem with the company; they was losing money, and the project got into like this kind of stagnation. And after 3 years, we kind of had to cancel the project. So it was pretty horrible for me because I'd worked on it for so long.
Yeah, it's such a tough, really traumatic process. I mean,
I think for people in the games business, that is the worst that can ever happen to you, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it is killing you, because if you and I had worked for this project for like with the pre-production and the stuff I'd done at home, I had probably worked on it for 5 years, This was my baby for 5 years. And then the whole thing, I kind of slowly realized we just can't get it finished,
Yeah.
And we were so close to the finish line, but the publisher pulled out, and then the other people pulled out, and it was like, okay, cool, now we have to stop, basically,
Yeah.
So I actually, so it's really a weird start with Zoink, because I at that point I decided I'm not going to make video games anymore. This is horrible. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Oh, okay, right.
You
had the same as Olov's comic book artist depression. You've reached your game developer depression. Yeah.
Yes, and also like you kind of like you were in the US and everything was going great. You come back and you start your own company, and then it totally fails after 3 years of really hard work, So I was like, no way. And I was thinking, should I go back to the US again? Should I get a job there? And that was hard too. And I applied for jobs there, and I didn't know what to do at all. But we ended up, me and a friend who worked as a game designer on it, we pitched actually a short movie to the Swedish National Film Institute in a way.
Right.
We got money for that, so we did a short film, one of the first 3D animated movies that was done with that kind of like from the Swedish television in a way, sponsoring that. So
wow.
So that was really cool, and we did that for 6 months or something like that. And that sort of got me into like, let's just turn Zoink into an animation company. So we did sort of cut So I did music videos. I did also stuff I could do just to make money, you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So music videos, which is paid nothing basically. And then we started doing some commercials because that's where the money is. And then you start doing more and more commercials, and we even ended up doing like a Nike commercial for Asia.
Wow, very
which
cool.
I designed entirely, which was very cool. So that I think that was the peak of like the sort of animation stuff we did.
Mm-hmm.
But then that actually, at the side, the Wii came out, and I kind of came up with this idea of, I was looking at the Wii, and my kids are really small, and I was like, I could see how they were playing. They were playing, Mario, and then we'll go into the room, and they were playing around with their plush toys, and I was like thinking about that, and then I saw that there's the Wiimote, of course, could be stuck into a plush toy or used together with the plush toy, I was thinking.
Yep.
And that's how I came up with the idea of something called Wiiwa, which we pitched, which is basically a plush toy that you put the Wiimote inside, and that was a video game. Then I was like, okay, if I get money for this, I'll do it, And I did win the competition. I got the money, and I was like, okay, let's slowly start making video games again. So as we were doing sort of commercials and things like that, we also starting up with video games again. And that's kind of like how Zoink got into making video games again.
You
so that
found
was
your love
interesting.
again. Isn't it interesting how you spend a little bit of time away kind of healing, expressing yourself as an artist in other ways, and then you can find your way back to that same craft that you maybe burnt you a little bit.
Yeah, and also it's also funny because I did during this time where I was off. First of all, I found out a lot of people think that commercial or making commercials is maybe an area where it's very not so creative. I would say at that time, at least, it was super creative.
Yeah.
This is like from 2008 to 2013 or something like that. I think it was a very, very creative place, and I was surprised by getting into these companies that made commercials, how creative these guys are, and what the ideas they had, and how much more open it was than comparing to video games in a way. So for me, it was like they were trying to talk to normal people in a way. It was not just the nerds,
Yeah, of course.
And it was about expression stories and all sorts of things that, and it was a very short time limit for each of the projects. So you got to do a lot of different things. And one of the things we really learned, I think really learned, which was to pitch. How do you pitch? Because you have to pitch a lot, and with commercials, like that's how you get the jobs.
Yeah.
Never thought of that, because we've done a lot of pitching together, and I've seen you pitch, Klaus, and like how did you start? Like I never heard that one. That it's like through commercials and doing that in a very short succession, kind of.
Yeah, but you remember Andreas Bayer, who also was working with Faye?
Yeah, my mentor.
Me and him, we pitched a lot of commercials before, and then we started pitching games together. So he's really good at that too. So we did a lot of work like that. It's also, and I wanted to mention also, I did also in that time, actually, I did get one project because I could sort of scale the company up and down lots. So we were about 3-4 people at one time. I was just one person, again, back to being one person. And I got a job to actually do a graphic novel for 1 year. So I got paid quite a lot. I think it was like $60,000 or something like that.
Wow.
To make a graphic novel for, what's his name? I forgot his name now. But it's one of those big bestseller guys who were doing, it was called Daniel X, James Patterson. So James Patterson is this kind of like American guy who does big crime novels, and he wanted to make kid stuff.
Cool. Oh, right.
And I knew a guy.
Crime novels for kids. I love it.
Yeah. So he wanted to do like this like, the way he writes stuff is like, he really writes very sort of like high level, and he outsources it to people, to ghostwriters.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right.
So I got that job to paint that one for 1 year, and I thought that was like, it's gonna be my dream job to do a graphic novel. I always wanted, like you, Olov, I always wanted to do this. I thought this is like, that's gonna be amazing.
You got paid to do it.
Yeah, I know. It was horrible. It was horrible. I hated it. It was such a. I mean, first of all, of course, the milestone list was like insane. I had to paint one picture, one draw, like a whole page a day. And it was so stressful. But mostly that I realized was really that it's such a lonely job. It's a very, very lonely.
You're just sitting there drawing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You never talk to anybody. You don't really have anybody to discuss it with. You're not collaborating with somebody else. And I really missed that from the game development times, and from also making commercials together and animations. And music videos. That's something you do with other people, and you always have like a human interaction about how you discuss things. But sitting there alone every day, just like, you know.
Yeah.
No, so I kind of learned the hard way. That's not for me.
We did, like when I lived in Uppsala for a while between, we moved back from the north to more central Sweden to work with home service and continue with my comic projects. I had some of my comic friends who also lived there, and we started this studio where we sat together and drew on our own projects. It was still like disconnected, like you didn't, like there's still a bit of, it's not the same as working on a project together in video games, but we had each other. But people were getting kids, and like no one was as kind of into it felt like the studio became more like a symbol that people were like, there's the studio, I'm gonna do my thing sooner or later. But I felt in the end I was also just sitting alone there. Like you have to find the like-minded people who are really into, really 100% into the same thing like that.
But
so what year was this? So place us in, that you were doing the graphic novel and kind of things that sort of reached a little bit of a lull at Zoink.
Sorry, what did you say?
What year was this?
So I think that was 2000, could have been 2008, 2009, somewhere there. I think something like that, That's kind of like, and one of the things that happened there was that was when we did Weewa, and Weewa actually got cancelled also. So interesting. We signed, I don't know if anybody knows Majesco, but it was a publisher.
Yeah, Majesco. I made some games with Majesco,
So Majesco was also, which is interesting because Majesco was the original publisher of Psychonauts.
Yes. Yeah. That was one of their big hits.
Yes.
Yeah. But the Weewa got kind of viral, didn't it, though? You got good publicity because it was such a weird idea.
After a while. And the thing was that what's interesting with the original game, the ones that got canceled the first time, actually, the old producer picked it up when we came out and actually got it redeveloped by himself with a new company, which I helped out a little bit. So the core, or it was renamed to the Core Gang, with the kids and the robots who actually got out of there on the Wii. But with me, basically just... they were doing it in Hamburg in Germany. So they did actually, it got released and then.
Yep.
But Weewa never got released. That is that's too bad. But yeah, basically it was around 2008, 2009. And then what was happening then, which was interesting, is that's actually when the iPhone got into, like, you could make iPhone games and iPad games. And I think that actually turned things around for us, because suddenly we realized we could make games our own. Small games,
do the self-publishing thing, and that actually turned into like the indie thing. Kind of started with that too.
So we did a couple of games for kind of work for hire. We did like an Adventure Time game. Which was really interesting. We did a couple of Disney games, but we also did our own game called Swing King, which is like this little cute cut the rope kind of game, if you remember that one. And it started picking up a little bit more and more, and that's how I started thinking about like Stick It to the Man. And there was like, I think Stick It to the Man was the first game that was really like, okay, let's make a real proper bigger game again. Start pitching that,
You're back on the platforms and stuff.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And for us, it was really the whole thing about there is starting to become, there's an indie scene now instead, and there wasn't that before. You have to remember in like 2003 or 2002, when you had to make a video game there, the only way to really make big money was release it on a disc. That's where the money was. But there was really no money for the developers, because when you release something on disc, there's so many people who takes a part of the cake as it goes out.
That waterfall is brutal, right? You're left with like $1.30 when it gets to you or something, if that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really, it was kind of like it was pretty tough, but with obviously online publishing and so on, that totally changed everything,
Yeah, it did really, like that democratization of development and distribution, right? All sort of happened around about the same time, and just had this incredible effect that led to the indie renaissance, as we call it, that obviously you and I were around for. So then you do Stick It to the Man and Zombie Vikings. You're definitely in your swing now of doing your PC and console kind of self-published titles. You're into Faye. You got a young Olov coming on, and the studio's kind of really picking up steam in this, and really I think finding your own voice in regards to this artistic
Mm.
kind of, well, signature, right? You really have like even if each game isn't the same, it's clear that it's a big hallmark of your studio, which is this big signature aesthetic. I mean, Olov, I'll throw to you. Coming into the studio, was there something that you noticed about the way that Klaus worked or the team worked that was, you felt might have been responsible for the games being just so incredibly stunning and gorgeous and kind of visual forward?
Oh yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I had a sort of a kind of reawakening or reconnection with my creative self when I it sounds really dramatic, but it felt like that when I saw the I love drama. Yeah, but I saw the Fe video and also how casual you were talking about it. You can, like, I don't know, you want to try this? You want to try drawing some? We do games and art and games, and it was so different from how other companies presented themselves with like, yep, okay, so shows your portfolio. Okay, good, great. You can contact us on this email, and then it was just it was night and day, and also visiting the studio, of course, and seeing how the setup and just the first thing that struck me was Sebastian Strand's green hair, who would later be producer with me when on Ghost Giant when we were realizing Klaus's vision there with a VR game where I created. It was my first creative direction job some years later. But also that there was like pink fluffy walls and lots of art hanging everywhere, and it was just candy for the eyes. And but yeah, what struck me originally was, and also like getting to know the studio, was just how there's a kind of what really stuck out from, like, it was so apparent in this meet and greet room with all the different projects there. How Zoink really wanted to find something new. There was a longing to break free from the ideas that you so easily fall into, even if you don't want to. Just like I had with 3D art, that I thought I wanted to be this flashy AAA 3D character artist, which is great, but wouldn't have been for me when I think back on it. And there was just this longing in the art to break free and do something new. And the variety of it was crazy. I was like looking at Fe, that was so beautiful, abstract, looking like chiseled stone. All of it, everything was kind of has this. If you look it up, Fe, the pronunciation of the game's title is still disputed to this day. Is it Fea or Fe?
Yes, yeah, I know. But it wasn't the greatest name.
No, it's a conversation starter.
Yes,
but yeah, and then that looks gorgeous in its own right. And then you have Stick It to the Man and Flipping Death that are more like these paper worlds, but they all have in common that they look handmade. There's always, I think, been this vein of like longing to make something handcrafted, and that kind of, that goes through from Ghost Giant to Fe and Lost in Random, that looks like a claymation movie, and then finally The Midnight Walk, where we actually could do it for real, in real clay.
It could literally be handmade, right?
Yeah, and it's like, all right, why haven't we done this before? Lost in Random, that looks, where we had to kind of mimic the style digitally, and now finally we could, like, it just feels like a whole, the journey comes full circle back to traditional work that we both come from originally.
Yeah. Now, I do want to, Klaus, I want to ping back to you here for a moment, because, all of your games, you can kind of see, like most studios, right? Like they're stepping stones to the one that we're going to be talking about today, right? They're a part of a studio and their story and everything. But the three before, I should say the two leading up to Midnight Walk, which is Lost in Random and then Ghost Giant, right? Like if I got my order correct there.
Yeah, I'm thinking two. Is it that?
Two.
It is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It's very it seems very much like you are really gearing up to be able to deliver something, as brilliantly executed as Midnight Walk with those two games. You've got the worlds. All of a sudden, they go from these, this 2D sort of flip book aesthetic into these beautiful worlds. And especially Lost in Random, this is just stunning, and a stunning leap in quality and fidelity from the game previous to it to that one, again, in scale and scope. Tell me about that kind of journey of those two games and getting to the Midnight Walk. What was involved in regards to Well, yeah, I mean that sort of
Yeah.
big leap in quality and scope and ambition and execution.
So I think the way it started was thinking about it now. The way it was started was that we'd done Flipping Death, and it is really like kind of like on top of each other. You kind of build on top of each
Yeah,
other.
right.
And I think
Yeah.
about it because you kind of start with Stick It to the
Compound
Man.
interest almost.
Yeah, because you just gotta start with Stick It to the Man, and it was like hand drawn backgrounds, which was kind of like on cardboards. And then I was thinking Flipping Death. We're gonna do hand drawn again, but we're not gonna put it on cardboard. We're gonna put on these like cut out, like almost like wood boards, because
Yeah.
it was about flipping the world, and there's two drawings on each side, so you should be able to see both of them. So that's not like, oh, it's almost like it's kind of like almost 3-dimensional in a way, but it's not really. But you can actually. And then I really got into VR, and I thought VR was pretty amazing actually, and I thought that was really cool because when you've been working with video games so long as I have, it's like kind of get bored with the medium after a while. There's not that much that
Yeah.
happens. It's still a 2D screen, so it's like suddenly you're inside, and it was pretty amazing. Not only from like a visual perspective, but also like interaction wise. I'm not just pressing buttons that are in front of me, which is very abstract. I can actually almost grab things in the world. I thought that was really amazing.
Yeah.
I think like again, like kind of core pillar in Zoink and Thunderfold later, and also Moonhood now is that we want to have. I mean, immersion is like the core kind of
to be
really being there,
excited.
feeling the world, and going somewhere.
Well, I think what's happening was that I just wanted to find a way. I thought like when I was testing VR, I thought it was really cool if you just moved your head a little bit like this. It was like kind of cool, but that was only cool if you had small stuff in front of you. So I was like thinking, and I always loved when I go back in my mind, I always really loved like puppets. I mean, I did puppets when I was a kid, and I had puppets theaters and stuff like that, and toys and things like that you really like. So I like small stuff, and I'm obviously a big fan of like Night Before Christmas and stop motions. That's always been sort of behind as a side thing like that, So it's like, oh, cool. Wouldn't it be cool if you were sitting in a stop motion sort of like set, So if you're sitting in a stop motion set in VR, and you can just see all these characters run around you, because that was like the pitch was really like, what if you're sitting in the middle of a set and you have all this whole world around you, and you're big but it's small, because then you can look inside the houses, you can look and you can open little doll houses and check out what's going on inside, and could we build a game around that? So that's how it. But then it's like, okay, if it was like these cardboard pieces before, it was like this before, then I wanted to look like doll houses. I want to look like doll characters. So that's why we started thinking about it. Well, can we make them look like they're carved out of wood, or can we make them look like they actually are real sort of small toys walking around? So that's how it started. And then from there, Ghost Giant is kind of looking like that. It's built up like, so it's supposed to look like small dolls walking around. And then when we went into, I think what happened was basically that we'd done like Stick It to the Man, we'd done Flipping to the Dead, we had Ghost Giant, and all very sort of colorful and happy. And I was like, I really want to make something that's just dark, I just want to do something.
There's too much happiness in this studio.
There's too much happiness, yes.
Tear down those pink fluffy walls.
No, because I think, and I can see that it happens even right now, even with this new project we're doing right now. I can't talk about it, but I really do love that we try to do something new, because it is a journey as a developer for yourself, because you have to sit there and you have to go through this for like 3 or 4 years, and it has to be interesting. It has to challenge you. It has to be a journey for you to look into this world and see something new. So it is kind of cool to try something else, Yeah. And then also it's like a lot of times I do think commercially. So I'm like, why isn't my game selling? I get all these good grades all the time, but they're not really selling a lot. So I was like looking, well, I think Little Nightmares that came out had sold like crazy, and of course there was this other one. What's the one with the red thread that EA was putting out?
Unravel.
Another one.
Sorry. Unravel, yes, Unravel, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things was also for me was basically, and that was the whole idea, was because we did Faye and at the same time, and Faye was really like, I could see that EA was actually publishing a real indie title, and I was like, that's what we should do. There's a whole story to how we actually got Faye pitched to EA and got it out and everything, because that was the first EA Originals title. But the idea was really like, I think we need to make something dark. So that's why it went from like puppets that are like kind of funny, happy, to, okay, let's do something that are, darker, and then you kind of dive back into, well, I really loved Night Before Christmas and all these kind of stop motion things, and I think when you think about it, remember I said to you in the beginning, I was watching a lot of Eastern European
the puppet shows. Yeah, as a kid, yeah.
puppet shows and stuff like that. That's probably somehow in
It's in there,
back of my mind, somewhere, So that's kind of like how it went these different stages. And I think one of the things that was also cool is that the team has grown more and more, and we realized it was easier and easier to make more and more detailed games. And we're like, let's just go all in. We're gonna do something that really looks like a almost AAA game, We're gonna try to put a lot of details into it. And that was Lost in Random. Lost in Random was really like, let's try to put a lot of details to this. Like, what happens if we have normal maps, and what if we have all these? We actually see rush all models, and we built them like in super detail. We never done that before. And why shouldn't we do that?
It's a stunning game.
Yeah. So and then at the same time, we hired an intern. Going back to interns, like Zoink was really built on interns. I would say like 70% of the people who were hired there were from schools. So
incredible.
That's how Olov got in, of course. That's how we found all our talent, and we found Victor Becker, which is now also our art director on Moonhood.
Wow!
And so he started out just before. I had sort of started with ideas for Lost in Random, and I had the idea of a dice that you could be thrown, sort of like that. We were playing around with the different sort of gameplay mechanics and things like that. And he came in, and he's like, he's so much better at drawing than I am. But I love his style. It really fits into what I'm doing, so we really connected really well. So it was because that was also needed to go from this kind of like more sort of cartoony, chunky look into something much more fantasy detailed in a way, Yeah.
And I mean, Olov, at this time, you were obviously no longer an intern. You're a game director on a couple of these titles as well, right?
Right, yeah. Like my first creative direction job was Ghost Giant. I had dabbed my feet in creative direction during FEA. I got assigned these different flashback, like cinematic scenes, playable cinematics, basically.
Cool.
I got, like, you can direct these, Olov, and try these out. See how that feels. I worked closely with a technical artist named Andrea Jönsson.
Do you remember at one time, actually, I remember I told you once, I think you could become a game director one day.
Oh, maybe.
Do you remember I told you that?
Yeah, no.
You got it in.
Because that was during FEA. And I was like, because I was like, this guy can draw, he knows how to tell a story, and he's just like, you were really on top of everything,
Oh,
yeah.
I was impressed.
Well, no, I was impressed. Get out of here. I'm jumping out.
You're the best.
No, but I really appreciate the faith. Of course, it was also, I really appreciate the faith put in me, and it also was a huge pressure because I had never done anything like that before with Ghost Giant, a team of 10. But it was a beautiful experience with a really beautiful game. We worked closely with a great author named Sarah B. Elfriend, who wrote a really great script about depression, and everybody on the team had some experience with the depression. It felt like there was a point where we were like discussing what a certain character would look when, like, there's a big scene in the game where it turns out someone is suffering from depression, and everybody was. I remember we were standing around the screen and like, I think she would like this if she's depressed, and someone else like, no, I think she would be on her side, and it was like catching each other. Kind of like, oh, you know a lot about this.
Yeah.
And it was just a very it was a very meaningful.
When I was depressed,
a very meaningful project, and
it's a beautiful game. Had you worked in VR before at all, Olov, or had you had much of an experience with it?
No, it was totally new. Kind of.
It was new to everybody.
By Klaus.
Nobody had worked on VR.
Right.
No,
it's the first one at the studio.
As Klaus mentioned, his idea, and then we take it further, and I worked with design and story together with Sarah there, and the whole direction of the thing, and together with Sebastian Strand with the green hair, a really great producer who understood he was really on the creative side, but also the schedule side. Of course, was healthy, like one foot in both, kind of not crunching too much numbers, but also not overscoping and. But that also went on to Ghost Giant, Lost in Random, where I co-directed with Klaus.
Right.
And also briefly, The Eternal Die that just released.
Death.
Dipping Death.
Sorry.
That was the first kind of we got into storytelling together, where we found out that we clicked really well when it comes to storytelling. Because we were it was a writer's room with you and me mostly, just trying to we need to come up with these jokes pronto, and it was a really great way to get to know each other, and that's I think where we laid the foundation for the way we work together, drawing together and to explain ideas, riffing off each other's ideas, and that's how we kept on co-directing games together. Also, the Midnight Walk and co-founding Moonhood is our the arc of our relationship.
I'm keen to get into now. Let's get into the Midnight Walk, but before we do, just set me up for, because this is all happening at Zoink, and now we're at Moonhood, the new studio that both of you have co-founded. Talk to me a little bit about how that came about, that sort of transition, what triggered it, and the Midnight Walk kicking off.
So we were doing Lost in Random. It got out, and at the same time was happening a lot of stuff around the company because I tried to do it quickly, but basically we had an investor who owned part of Zoink, who also owned another company called Image and Form, making the SteamWorld games. Maybe some people know about these. They're pretty big. And we hit it off really well with that company, and I worked really closely with Brian Sigurd Gerjesson, was the founder of that company, and we sort of got closer and closer to each other. And in the end, we decided we're gonna put those two companies together. We're gonna form something called Thunderful.
Yep.
So Image and Form had it became Image and Form Zoink, sort of ended up under this umbrella, which was kind of like Thunderful.
Yep.
And then after a while, this is when Embracer got out, and there was like this, everybody started doing IPOs and getting to the stock market, and we saw an opportunity to do that too. So we basically put everything together in a big package, and we created something called the Thunderful Group, and that got then onto the stock market. So I was inside that package, and I became like head of development for this huge thing that it turned into. So one thing led to another, that suddenly I was in charge of 160 people in Sweden, with 4 different studios.
That's wild.
And I was like, it was a really interesting journey, and it was also, you learn a lot of things about yourself and how you work as a person and as a boss and everything. And it was pretty tough for me, and I realized I just really want to go back to being creative again, and I really didn't have time for that, even though my job was sort of half, but it's also, you got to let other people being creative, but you couldn't do it yourself, but you really want to,
Yep.
So after a while I decided, this is really not me. I can't be part of this thing anymore. So I quit the whole thing, and I decided.
A tough decision, right?
It was very, very tough. Very, very tough, because Zoink was still sort of part under that whole thing, but it turned into something else. But it also, the feeling of the company was really not fun Zoink anymore. It was just like this giant thing,
I remember when you left. For me, we were working on Eternal Die then. And for me,
which is a spin-off that just released from Lost in Random.
Yeah, which is doing great, by the way. I'm very happy with how it turned out. But I mean, I did not. I worked a year on pre-production, and then the team did the game. But during that time, I just felt like something, like the air kind of left out of the office. Like for me, at least, there was
the smelly air.
Yeah, like
you breathe again suddenly.
Like suddenly smell the plants. I hate plants. No, but it was just felt claustrophobic without Klaus in the house.
It was a tough decision, but also like really great, because I have been working since I was 19 years old. I mean 16 in a way when you think about it, constantly. So I was just like, I'm gonna give myself a break and just go home. And I was thinking, I'm just gonna be an artist, just do art, And I'm not complaining. I did make a lot of money on the IPO thing and all that stuff. So I was like, I had the means to basically take it easy for a while.
Yeah, to relax.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna give myself that break, and I'm gonna take it easy. And so I went back, and I sort of parallel. I've always been doing these sculptures on the side a little bit, on and off,
Yeah.
And in the last couple of days, especially when we're doing Lost in Random, I started building more, because that was the look we were going for. So I was thinking, I'm going to do some more sculptures to inspire the team and so on. So when the year before I left, also I started doing more and more sculptures, and I thought it was fun. And I said, yeah, I'm just going to go home and do sculptures. That's it. But not really with any purpose, But really quickly, I realized it's like I'm building a new universe here. I'm actually building. These characters do fit together. There's something with it. I would really want to make something, and I was like, I just really miss working with Olov. Where are you, Olov?
Where's my Olov? Yeah.
Yes. So I started making this demo, and after a while, I showed it to Olov, and we pitched it to PlayStation first. Pitched it, and I kind of knew that they were looking for something for PSVR 2, and I really pitched it as a hybrid game directly.
Remember, you came with me with this, one of the first sculptures for the whole that turned out to be the Midnight Walk later was Potboy, for instance, was one of the first, which is just the first try and the thing you see in the game that you also showed to me those years ago.
Wow.
What if you have this little character with a flame out of his head, and immediately we started to riff again. I hadn't done that in a while, and start like to me seeing that and a character where that revolves around fire and the world growing out of that fire is such a to me there was such a big metaphor for there. Also for us with the Midnight Walk, for everybody walking along, everybody's walking down the Midnight Walk, trying to keep their spark alive, and there's all these threats to try to eat your flame. And for us, this was a very therapeutic journey coming out of Lost in Random. That was a great project, but had many challenges and big team ups and downs, and in the end, what's left after that?
It was really cool because a lot of times I do things, but I don't know what I'm doing. But Olov really has a way to make it into something that actually makes sense,
like harness that energy towards a planet or something, right?
So there's a story that's sort of so I was like, I don't know what you mean by fire, but after a while, okay, I get it now, you know what I mean? So that's how the whole thing got started.
And so obviously PlayStation liked it. And when you say hybrid, I think it's really, you know what? Here's actually a great point for us to stop. And maybe, Olov, I'll throw it to you to do this. Can you just give our listeners, for those of them who might not be aware of what the Midnight Walk is or familiar with it, can you give them your sort of elevator pitch for the game? Tell them what it is.
Right. So the Midnight Walk is sort of a cozy horror adventure game that takes place in this dark world where devoid of sun and light. And you wake up in this sarcophagi. You sort of dig yourself out of your own grave and find yourself in this dark world. And quickly you find that there are monsters that want to eat you, and there's an omnipresent darkness that stalks you. And escaping these dangers, you find Potboy, this little lantern creature that you relight. You can find these giant matches. You're stuck in this giant miniature stop motion world. And so you find these giant matches, you light Potboy, he comes alive, you quickly start to regain his trust, you start to build a friendship with him and venture down the Midnight Walk together. And you realize that you have to spread light, and you make your way, the road set, let me rephrase that. The road, so the road also takes different directions. You will get sidetracked into these different fairy tales about warmth and light and spreading fire and what it means to people and to yourself. It's a very poetic journey. We try not to say too much, but always at the end of the road, at the end of the horizon, you see this giant mountain with a moon above it, and these strange characters that you meet keep talking about Moon Mountain and that you have to reach the moon and the end of the road. And light fire along the way. But the game mechanics in itself is a lot of around stealth, outsmarting these monsters that want to eat your fire, but also exploration and meeting this interesting cast of characters. And a lot of storytelling, very, very narrative driven. There's some horror in it, of course.
It's very affecting world as soon as you get into it. It's those moments are very visceral, not spoiling anything, is literally the start of the game, but the first thing you do is some creature gives you their eyes, and because you can't see, and then you put their eyes in. And of course, now you were mentioning before, it's a hybrid game, and when you say hybrid, you mean it's both flat screen, as in, you play it in the way you would normally play a game on a PS5, and then it's also PSVR 2, right? So you're literally reaching out, grabbing these big eyeballs with your hands if you're playing in VR, as I was for half of it, and you're popping them into your head and then grabbing your ears and popping them on, and then you're off into the world. And it really is stunning. It really feels like, and congratulations to you both. It's such an incredible, not just artistic achievement, but technical achievement as well. Obviously, the fidelity is just incredible. I mean, what a fantastic platform for it as well, PSVR 2. But it really is like you're standing on the set and you are one of the characters from a Leica film or a Tim Burton film, like Nightmare Before Christmas or something. I mean, you're definitely alongside those. You're in a league of your own there alongside these two giants. It's just incredible work. And as I was saying, from the work you were doing at Zoink leading up to this on Lost in Random and obviously Ghost Giant, it's clear that this is sort of the zenith of that, the pinnacle of that sort of talent that you've reached. And I hope it continues on from here, right? It's
just downhill from now. It's just
downhill. Yeah, it's a pinnacle that continues going. That's what I meant to say. It's just like, I mean, it's just incredible, right? And I think something to really stress for people here, like Klaus, you mentioned talking about these physical models, and you've been doing sculpting, but this is something that a lot of people have tried and failed before, and there are some great games that have done similar things, but you are actually scanning physical models. So everything you're kind of looking at in the game is a physical model that you've scaled, and then the animators are actually animating that thing that's scanned in to then look like it is stop motion. So they're animating it in steps and things like that as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. No, we do. I think the whole thing that I found out when I was like taking my little absence of everything was like, oh, right. Because I'd done this kind of like photogrammetry scanning before, but it was always been very complicated. You take a lot of photos and it takes forever to calculate it. But now with like the new phones that has such a good camera in them, there's some apps out there that just makes it kind of easy, and I'm quite lazy, so I just need it, and I'm also I don't have no patience at all, so I just.
Well, I was watching a video online, one of your dev diaries, and then it shows you just scanning a model with a phone, and I was like, in my mind, I had like this idea that there would be a huge technical setup or something like that. You're just sitting on your desk.
It's super indie. Yeah.
Built your own kind of light box with it. Just
we built our own light box over there.
Funny.
Yeah, it's just like. Actually, my daughter is in here today helping me scan some stuff, so it's
it's that
I'm
easy.
I'm not saying that it's but it's easy, not always easy. There can be a lot of problems with it too. So obviously, if people try this out, I know you can run into problems, but it's much easier than it was before. We have got over 700 scans right now, which means that we have about over 700 different models.
Yeah,
and that could be anything from like a tiny doorknob or a brick or like a mask until like a huge house or like a whole like a story kind of piece like this.
Yeah, classic. Just for those who are listening along, classes behind.
I'm holding up an object right here. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
there's an object here.
So these are some of them, and then of course once you've got all these objects in there, we that becomes our Lego bits that we put together in Unreal,
Right, and so that piece that you just showed us, is that like a environment like plaque or like almost like a matte painting, the equivalent?
Yeah, that's so basically like for here's like here's a weird tree that I'm holding up. So this one is 3D scan, so that becomes something you can sort of like just put out. You can like create a whole forest out of if you have a couple of those, a couple different ones like that.
All right, so talk me through the process, kind of from start to finish of let's say a character. What are the steps for developing a character and bringing them to life in the game?
So we talked about that yesterday. It was kind of weird because some of the characters was something I had created at home, which would be like, here's a cool character. I don't know what it is. And then Olov came up with a story with it. And I was like, oh, wow, amazing,
Thanks,
so, and it's like, it just
that's exactly what I was thinking when I...
not at all. I was like, thank you. I have no idea what it is. But a lot of times, it would be something that we just create out of fun. It's just an interesting shape or something like that. We kind of know that we need something in the story that is in that direction, And a lot of other times, of course, you start out with like concept art, you draw something on paper, and we discuss it. And then from there, we basically go quite quickly into doing like a clay model, which is basically aluminium foil that you then, it's probably some kind of armature inside, a simple aluminum wire armature, and then aluminum foil on top of that to kind of create the shapes out of that. And then we used a couple of different clays, but the one we mainly use is Super Sculpey, which is kind of like a plastic kind of clay that you can sort of put on. It's very nice to work with. So if you want to try this out, Super Sculpey. And then that can be baked in a normal oven in like 15 minutes, and it gets hard as plastic basically. And then you spray paint it. Like I'm holding up one that's actually spray and painted black here now. And then and that one on top of that, you basically paint it with acrylics. So it can be those kind of like small miniature paints that we use.
For your Warhammer, set, right?
Yes, it's very, very similar to that, and so there's a lot of dry brushing techniques, for example, which we love to use because it has to look old. And I'm always like, I love dry brushing. And dry brushing is basically when you have a tiny bit of paint on your brush and you just rub it in, and it's like all the little details comes out, and it's like, wow. Because it's so easy in a way.
And you feel like a hack, doesn't it? Like
yes, it feels like you're so good at painting, but like it just comes out by itself. Okay, cool. So yeah, but it's also part of the style that we go for. We do want to have stuff looking rough, It's very important to us that it doesn't look like it's too clean. So I love when you play the game. You might sometimes find that there's like a pin still stuck in a house, or there's like, I can see that's a piece of tape, or that's a piece of like an old newspaper. Or actually, I do see that this house is built out of cardboard, and I notice it, and that's fine, I want to see the brush strokes. I want to see the ugliness of it, which I think is pretty.
And it's a lot about the beauty in the ugly as well. This game, isn't it? And I like when you talk about broad brush strokes, and I think that's also something we talked about for all different aspects of the game, everything from music to dialogue and gameplay mechanics. Everything should feel like chunky and like everything is in broad brush strokes. The music feels very tangible, just like the clay, and the gameplay is very direct and
yes, I mean, if you look at Lost and Random is like a polished kind of like Harry Potter kind of world, which is sort of clean and nice. It's very pretty and it's beautiful. I love it. But this one is more like Mad God. It's like a
it is really like almost those exact sounds in the game. Like it's like there are moments where like things run up to you and in your face, and it's really quite full on at points. For sure. Now I love what you're saying about the character. That's the word I'm using, but like the blemishes and everything, add this character to everything, right? It's like, and Olov, you were saying before about that handmade feeling that that Zoink previously and now obviously Moonhood have had within the two of your games. It really, those blemishes really bring out that handmade thing, because as you were saying, Klaus, if you can see a little bit of what was there actually before it became the thing that it is now, before it came that character, whether it be a piece of tape or a bit of newspaper or something, it's sort of the proof that it was handmade at some point. But do finish just once you've got it painted, then you scan it, right? And then
basically you scan it with we use like an iPhone 12 or something like that,
your daughter scans it.
Well, it can be. We had
but if you don't have
we had a
daughter.
girl working actually who started out as a summer job, Pixie. Her name is Pixie, which is really fun because that's actually the one of the kids in my first game is called Pixie. So I was like, your name is really Pixie? That's insane. It's meant to be. I hire you. No, but Pixie started out. Pixie started out with scanning during a summer job, and then she had a break from studies, and now she's actually in gaming school here in Gothenburg. But she became a scanning person, So we scan it with a phone, and then once it's scanned, it comes in as like these kind of high-res models with textures on them. And the textures are really important because that really gives it the look of it,
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then that's done. Then it's sort of like same procedure after that as a normal ZBrush model or a digital model. Retopalize it, I think it's called.
Yeah,
retop or something like that. When you put the polygons a little bit nicer, and then rigging it. And then I think one of the important aspects here is that we got a really amazing animator onto the team. Lucas, what's his last name now?
Lucas Åsaborn.
Saborn, who really came in and he said like, I really want to animate it like a stop motion.
A funny thing is that was the tables were turned. We were at meet and greet together, and I was on the other side of the table that time. With you.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
He
was kind of elbowing
jobs.
himself. Yeah, he was elbowing himself to us, like, I'm gonna work for you, and he has lovely ADHD energy and showed this portfolio where like I want to do things. I want to animate on twos and do this stop motion style. That's what I built my whole portfolio around. Please hire me, and we did.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It was the right pitch at the right time.
Oh yeah,
definitely, yeah. But I think we had shown some of it to the school, so they already knew a bit what we're doing.
Right,
so it was really, if you're gonna do a game that looks like something, I want to. So what we do is we animate it as sort of like a stop motion style, but we don't always keep it on twos. We sort of mix it a little bit, and he got this kind of he softened it up. So it's kind of cool style. It feels like it, but it's not always, because then it can feel too like low frame ratey. Especially when you run in VR, where we're running like very high frame rate.
There's some elasticity to it, that there's like,
yes,
even there's a choppy movement, there's a woink, kind of like a little elastic bounce when it hits the frame.
Yeah.
Did you find any particular hacks? Because this is something that our studio went down the path of. One of our games had stepped animation on 8s, and there's, I know a bunch of people who've done a similar thing. It's one thing to do it in a linear format like a film, but when you're in a game and you have control over a character and things need to be smooth in some instances or snappy in others, or the environment is not stepped to the same animations, it can actually be quite a jarring, and as you say, Klaus, it can appear quite glitchy at times.
Yeah.
Were there some kind of hacks that you found, or little, things that you put in your stop motion animation Bible along the way that was like, okay, I'm just making stuff up, but like the environments are always on 6s or always on 12s, because if they're on anything less, it feels wrong, or we had to sync the environments and this to make it not feel glitchy. Did you have any of those sort of things that helped you make it feel more like a smooth experience for the player and the world, the integrity of the world, while still having that stop motion claymation feel?
I think for the cutscenes or whatever you call it, that was a lot easier to do and stepped. And we still have we never actually animated the camera on stepped. We always had that smooth, because also a lot of times you control it yourself, so you're looking around or you're controlling how you look. But I think for the gameplay animations, they're actually really gameplay, and they have to. We don't really do step there, and some places we don't do step at all. So I think it's hard to find a specific rule. This is it.
I would say that.
I
can say that. Like, even though it wasn't, maybe I don't know if it was conscious, but like when I see it now, I think this like it's a way of testing things, just feeling if it's right or not, and the environment, for instance, ends up not being stepped for the most part. There are like these mushrooms that moves very smoothly. And in some way, at least for us, it works that way. I think that when you see Potboy doing some stepped animations in front of you, and there's this smooth movement around him, it becomes more apparent that it's, this is stop motion style. It's not lagging. If everything was stepped, then maybe that would be actually more jarring, at least for ours, in our case. There's also there's a mushy kind of post-process effect on everything in the game that also kind of softens things a bit. So we have some film grain and blur and working with things like that. So that kind of softens up that look also. So it's not just about the animation style, but the rendering also, I would say. But I don't think we have clear rules there, but just vibe checking.
Not.
Whatever achieves the illusion, right? And that you're going for.
And I think we're still exploring that too. We're still trying to figure it out also.
Experimenting. Like enemies, for instance. Like sometimes we're trying out an enemy. We have been trying out an enemy that in the first try had completely smooth animations, and you see all the details in their creepy movement. That were really cool. And then that was just a sketch. And then we tried a different version of it with stepped animation, and then suddenly it wasn't as tangible or real or scary, because it was just like chopping in front. Like it didn't feel as real. You can't touch it in a way. So it's a hard balance, especially if you're making horror. Then stepped maybe it's not always the right way to go.
Well, that's actually a perfect segue, because I know, Klaus, you're talking about wanting to make something dark, but you've basically, I don't know if you two would describe it as that, but I mean, you just kind of did the H word. Would you call the game a horror game? Because I mean, I think you called it cozy horror, right? So talk to me a little bit about the horror genre and stepping into it, and sort of what you wanted to how scary you wanted to make it, and then the ways you wanted to make it scary, or what horror means to you, or cozy horror.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what you think, Olov, but I think first of all, I think it's always. I think we like that there's like differences, like that you really feel like there's a contrast to it, and there's a pacing. I think the pacing is also very important. That we talked a lot about when we started the project. Is like there's going to be nice stories. There's going to be characters that really you care about. There's obviously Potboy is supposed to be like really cute, and he is, and you have to take care of him. But at the same time, he's like this little ugly, weird demon thing, he looks like. But he mainly is really cute, and you want to make sure you really take care of him. So you want to have the contrast of other ones that really want to take him or kill him or eat his fire, And I think the idea was really that you would go into dark areas and you would really feel directly with the music, oh, now it's bad, stress, and finish the stress and get out of there. And then, back to the story, or back to like the nice characters, and continue with that. So I think really like the pacing of that. And I think we didn't really decide that how horror could we go, but I think somehow we're working towards horror, but we're not really there yet. It was hard for us to go all the way there because that's not where we really come from, I think.
But that's kind of why I asked it too, because it did seem like a bit of a step outside of what you'd usually done. Sorry, Olov, you were saying something?
No, it's sorry. No, I was thinking that me personally as a video game player, if I try a horror game, I want to play more horror games, but it is, as Klaus mentions, for me, it can be quite a threshold to get over when it's constantly horror all the way through and just darkness and no hope or nothing to latch onto if you're not a seasoned horror player. So for me, it's also about taste and also what the kind of stories I want to explore. I love the darkness. I love the scariness. I love to be scared. And you become more susceptible to other emotions if you really frightened and then something really safe approaches you, or something funny. And I think that makes for stronger stories in general when you have these contrasts, rather than sorry, this is a hot take, but I'm not a huge fan of Jude, for instance, because it's all just prophecy, everybody's stone-faced and everybody cares about the prophecy, everyone's super serious, and it's so boring. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm going to get hate.
We're allowed, we'll permit it. We will permit it.
It's just a matter. It's a matter of taste, and it's a really cool movie, but I don't want things to just look cool. I also want to feel things and be surprised.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That happens with contrast.
When we were doing our mellow, one of the goals for the creation of the world, because to some degree it's a digital board game, right? You can't. There's not much control we have over the linear tone or pacing of someone's game. We can put in different things. So really what I was thinking about is in the creation of the world is like the ratio of darkness to coziness, because we were inspired by a lot of grim fairy tales, but then also we wanted that real fantasy kind of like high adventure feel, that sort of the swashbuckling fun of like a Robin Hood or something like that as well. And it's someone that I would always talk about, obviously, one of the greats, like Miyazaki. If you think about his films and the Studio Ghibli films, almost every single one has these really, really dark moments to it, and incredibly dark themes that can be quite scary. The classic thing with Star Wars, and New Hope is like that as well, really grim, dark moments. But it's the balance of, like you say, Olov, like how long someone holds, as I would say to the team, like how long do we hold the player down in the darkness before we have to let them back up for air, and like bring the light back in, shine a light back in them. And it's really, I think a lot of, whatever it might be, whether it's Dune, a big film, or whether it's another video game or something, or an animation, a lot of folks will hold someone in a particular place for too long. And it can be like actually just too bright and bubbly, or too serious or too scary the entire time. Right, it's that contrast that really, I think someone was on the podcast recently that said, it was Stefan from Gorilla, who said, you can't have variety without contrast, right? Like you can't have that difference there. Like without the contrast, it's really important.
Yeah. And of course, there's like different levels of where you are. You know, like are you keeping them? Is it down here and the contrasts are here, or is it up here and it goes up here?
Yeah.
But I still think that I mean I don't think if we're ever going to go to some kind of like more sort of body gore kind of things where it's really like your hands are chopped off and blood spurting everywhere.
As long as there's something cute on the other side of that gore.
Yeah, because that would also be weird, to mix
smiling.
that, really weird.
Nothing's out of bounds. It needs its equal match on the other side, right?
Yeah. So we are. I mean, I think also the way we started out was we were the thing we were like. It's also a thing that I kind of want to. I've already started. We're gonna try to do a horror game, and then I know we're not gonna be a total horror game because I think it's good to set like a goal of something where you want to go, and it's also like it's good for people to understand that it's something else that we did than Lost and Random, and sort of like where are we in the space of what are we selling right now, what kind of product are we making, so that's and I think we're probably going to stay in that area a little bit, maybe for the next project also,
cool.
to explore that and see how we are. And let's see if we go darker or not.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm actually designing a lot of the enemy characters now for the next game. So it's really like, how disgusting should I go with this?
Spoilers, there are enemies. You heard it here first.
Yes.
And also this, but also like it's not a matter of just the taste in our storytelling, but also like how we feel about storytelling, but also the narrative and what we want to tell about Midnight Walk and finding this kind of the beauty in the dark and the ugly and wisdom and safety in darkness, or like the relationship between light and dark and what is
Yeah, tell me a little bit. You touched on, obviously, the two of you working together on the storytelling aspect visually. And it's kind of teased me a little bit for your storytelling process at Moonhood. Talk to me about how you broke the story for this game, what the process of it was, because it is such a beautiful, intimate story. It really is an achievement. Like, how did you first break the story? How long were you refining it through development? Were you testing it internally, externally? Essentially, the question I'm asking is, how did you come about making such an incredibly moving story, for a game?
I think I just want to like a way to start talking about it is how we work together. And we actually had this discussion yesterday because when we started out Midnight Walk, it was quite easy because like it was easy to keep building off each other because it started out with Klaus showing these 3 or 4 models that he had built, and we together started imagining what the world could be and the story based on that, like the bigger brushstrokes of the story. But now that we're from the like coming up with the idea together from the very beginning with this new game, it doesn't become as apparent. Like Klaus had his space to do his own creative art without anyone interfering. And I had my space to go and write the script, the storyboard, and come up with things on my side. And I think the magic happens when both Klaus and I, because we're trying to work out how we're going to collaborate on this next project and create these spaces where we can be fully creative, but then come together and then show each other our stuff and mash it together. Because we love to sit together and riff off each other's ideas, and that's often how we come up with bigger brushstrokes. But then we also did our own time to just get dreamy, as David Lynch say. And you can't get dreamy when someone else is in your head. So like right now is the challenge, for instance, like now we have an opportunity for me to go, I mean, from my like I like to go dive into themes and building the structure of the story and then writing dialogue and so there's an opportunity to come up with these really thought out stories that maybe ask of Klaus to design a character. But then again, I know from the Midnight Walk that so much of the stories come from me getting surprised and seeing an amazing design that came from the subconscious of Klaus without any sort of thought out idea what it is. That's what gives me creative spark also. So there's a balance of, it's a tricky balance of balancing all of that and getting free space to do your own thing and then riff with it. And for instance, Klaus came with me, sorry for, this is a long, but
good.
Klaus came with me with, for instance, the Molgrim, which was one of the first sculptures, this swamp monster. And separately, he had also been making these little head creatures that kind of look like the Spirited Away hop head characters. And those were very separate at one point. We're talking about maybe there's a chapter that revolves around these headlings of Headville or Nobodyville that it later came to be called, and then we have the Mulgrim, this monster, and for me, looking at those two, I try to look for these different chemical, like these ingredients that you can put together for a great chemical reaction, and seeing these bodies. And the Mulgrim start talking about like what happens if those two get together. What if we combine those? And she's terrorizing them.
Yeah.
And then we start talking about like, well, where are the bodies? Why don't they have bodies? Well, maybe the bodies were fighting each other, and they used fire, because it's about fire, to hurt each other. And so the bodies the heads banished them. And that also for me turns into, because I'm very into meditation and like every dude these days. but
and about headless meditation, yeah,
exactly. Or like, and this kind of relationship with head and mind, head and body, and how you can be like, how a lot of our suffering comes from this disconnection with mind and body. So there is like a deeper theme. It's kind of like spirituality for dummies, but then it goes through a filter, and then there's these characters who are kind of very gruff and like very, very stone caveman kind of in their expression, and how you think you have things figured out, like it's all about the head, but that it's like, no, it's actually, you got to make peace with the whole thing. And just like the Morgrim has to, I'm just painting up the whole kind of process of realizing the story, finding deeper themes, but also just letting things be what they are visually. For instance, Klaus coming up with Housey, a house just wandering along the road with you.
About Housey.
And
such
there's
a great
no
part of the game.
Yeah, there's like no like you can interpret it as you will, and it's just visually that's the story that awakens something in everybody in different ways. And we just
we did talk about. I remember we did talk about. I think a lot of times, really the way the best things that we come up with is like the brush strokes. The big brush strokes are really. We come up with some kind of, like Olov comes up with the, like maybe them, like, we talk about it, but then we come up with, like, for example, if we come up with Coalhaven, it's really like, I really want to have a ghost story in there. And you're like, okay, ghosts, what if, and I think we could do something cool if you come into a different environment with the snow, and then again, well, it has to be about fire, every story has to be about fire. And it's really about discussing things back and forth. It's really like a writer's room, we sit and talk about it and sit and discuss things and come up with it. But then we also need to let each other have space where, okay, we have enough now. Don't talk more about it because you're just ruining it. You're going into much details, So leave it, keep it dreamy,
Yeah, like Chris,
don't take the mystery out of it. We don't want to, we don't want to know the midi-chlorian count of Housey or whatever.
Exactly, and then we sort of break off, so we can't sit too long, because if we sit too long, we just destroy it and we get annoyed with each other also.
I just want to draw, I think, an interesting example. This is part of our team building, Klaus, here at the podcast. But like, for instance, I can sometimes, there can be friction if I comment too early on one of your designs, and then maybe I come with a suggestion with a new sketch, and you're like, okay, just tell me what the problem is, and I'll go and and I'll go and do the sketching, and then for me it might be I'm writing dialogue, you're feedbacking my dialogue. I'm like, okay, so you think it's too goofy. I'll go and rewrite this on my own, thank you. Or like, we need our own kind of
don't talk too much about it. No, but we're very, as any artist, you're really sensitive to feedback, you really are, and you have to be very careful with that. You have to really respect each other a lot, and that's always hard when you're working in a team with anybody, basically. Absolutely. And especially with us also, we have to really. But the cool thing about me and Olov, I think, is that we are very, very in sync on what we like,
really very much seems like there's a kind of an artistic simpatico here for sure.
I mean, I'm not as big Star Wars fan as Olov is, but he learned a lot of really cool structures from that, of course, classic storytelling, and but I mean, a lot of other things. I think for this project and the things we're doing with Moonhood right now is very, very much in sync, And also, I would also want to bring in Victor Becker, who's the art director. He has really been part of especially for example, Lost in Random, but also for this one too more now. He came in a bit late into Moonhood, but you can see for this new project, it's always good for me and Olov, we start there's too much. We bring in Victor, and he's like, what do you think?
He slaps a painting in the wall, and we're like,
yeah. This is how it is.
yeah.
He's the tiebreaker. Yeah, I love it.
Yes,
All
exactly.
agrees.
Yeah. So
I do have like one question that I would be amiss of me to ask before I leave, and this is the feature specifically around closing your eyes in the game. So, Klaus, do you maybe want to, just for our listeners again who haven't played the game, just quickly tell them what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yes. So in the game, you could basically, at any time, you can close your eyes. And once you close your eyes, and you could do this physically if you play the PSVR 2 game, because there's eye tracking inside it. So it can track your eyes and see what you're looking at. But we were thinking like, well, let's use it as a feature. I kind of like thought, well, can it track if you close your eyes? And yes, it can. So then I was thinking, could we do that, make that into a feature where basically if you close your eyes, just kind of like meditating or thinking more and listening to your environment. Because when you close your eyes, normally in real life, you listen a lot more, you know? So I was thinking, what if you close your eyes and we then enhance some sounds in the game, you know? So basically you can sort of search for stuff with sound, you know? So that's how it works. But then we were thinking like, oh, what happens then in flat screen version? How does that work there? We're quite worried about that for a long time. And we got implemented that really you have these kind of two borders that sort of close together with the screen. So when you press a button, it sort of closes the screen.
Looks like you're closing your eyes, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like you're closing your eyes. And it turned out really good. We tested it out on a lot of people, and people really do like the idea of that there's, okay, now I'm just in the darkness. And I had to, it's funny because we had to quite a lot often fight with people about like, you know, people start saying, well, if you close your eyes, there's still obviously a screen. So right now we have some sort of particles you see there. And people are like, but I want to show the key on the screen still in this darkness. I'm like, no, I really want people to just listen, you know, because once you start showing something visually on the screen, they start looking at that and they don't stop listening. Yeah, they forget to listen. So, and this, I think actually, honestly, one of the reasons why we signed with PlayStation was because we pitched this idea to them, because that was pitched originally from the original pitch, because they really wanted something that stuck out for the PSVR 2, and this was the feature. They were like, that's amazing, we want to try that, you know, want to see that happening.
And also accidentally kind of
great feature.
The happy accident is that it also ties into the narrative and like it's so lovely about game design, making games and stories in games in particular that way, is how just a game design idea can suddenly swoop in and just connect the dots in the story and vice versa, and how it's so much about
because the story is about darkness, and you like really submit yourself to the darkness by closing your eyes in a way, so it really feels like you dive into your own darkness,
finding the calm in the storm. And that contrast of wishing away an enemy, like you like.
Yeah, that was I think that was what I really thought worked really well, because we started at the beginning. We started with basically listening for things, these little key creatures that you can listen for to find. But then we're like thinking, what if you could listen for where the monsters are? And then one of the game designers, Pontus, he put one of these ice symbols directly on one of the. We were just supposed to have these ice symbols that you can sort of meditate on, and then things would change the environment. But then he put it directly on one of the monsters, and I was like, that's so great, because then it's like it's running towards you, and you're like, oh my god, I want this to disappear, and you thought I have to blink your eyes. Close your eyes to make it disappear, and you open your eyes, it's gone. And that really feels like, you know, the way I mean, we probably had this when you were kids, like, oh no, there's a monster, oh, I'm closing my eyes, it's going to go away. It feels very connected to kind of horror, or feeling that you don't want to see something, you know.
Yeah. All right, now it would be amiss of me as well to, I know that I said that for the last question, but I'm going to ask this one. I fell in love with Housey. And like the idea of Housey is just such a great character, such a great mechanic. I mean, I think it's oozing house moving castle inspiration, of course, right?
Definitely, yes.
But there's so much more there. So, Klaus, just tell me a little bit about Housey, because I'm sure so many people who play this game just fall in love with that concept as well.
I think, it's just it's one of those doodles you do on a paper, and you're like, oh, a house, and I'll put legs on it, you know, and it looks funny, you know, and you're like obviously inspired of the you know, and then I think I built it at home already, just because I thought it was fun to build it. So I built this. It's built in cardboard mainly, you know. It's kind of like this size. It's standing right over here.
Right.
And then I I showed it to Olov, and I was like, I think we had an idea early on that was like, oh, it'd be cool if this house, like we had the idea was actually that I think that the original was that you would just walk past it, and you were like, and then after a while it's just a normal house, and then after a while you would like turn around and you're like, and you see somebody sitting down, like sneakingly, like, what? I thought that house moved. Did it move? And then you go a little bit further into the game, and it's like, there's somebody sneaking behind me, and it's like slowly it comes up to you, and you realize it's following you. It's been following you all the way through the game. But that got in. I think we talked down about it, and we thought, that's going to take too long. We really want to get, because I think I don't know if you came up with this idea, Olaf, but probably that you thought it would be cool to have it as your collectibles with you. So
Can't remember
back and seeing your collectibles, and so of course you want to quite early get into the house and see what's in there. And also, it was really on the cutting board for a very long time. So because it was one of those features where, like, it doesn't really bring the story forward. It's not needed in any way, It's really just there. If you think about it, we could have cut out Housey entirely.
Then there's so much and then also the story. There's some story twists that are important with Housey, and it becomes such a huge icon for the game also.
So that changed, and then we're like, we really need to have it in there because this is a brilliant idea,
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're completely safe from monsters when you're in Housey as well. It like provides that escape from the intensity sometimes of outside. It's just such a wonderful little idea.
Yeah, and it works well. It's happy because a lot of people will, of course, there's a lot of collectibles in the game, a lot of sculptures that you can find around the game, and a lot of times people forget they're doing that. But because you have to go into Housey to bring you past a couple places where it's raining to protect Blood Boy and so on, you're like, oh right, I got all this stuff in my house. I can just take a little break in here and have a look at all this stuff.
And that's
it's so cool to see it like growing, your collection growing over time.
Yeah, and then there's like this unintended, like these happy accidents that give characters so much more personality. In that Housey has the procedural animation for its legs.
Oh really?
So the legs are, it works with mats somehow. Matthias Söderholm, a really great technical artist, who helped us work that out.
Yeah, it's not animated by hand.
Yeah, no,
that's
so
awesome.
It adjusts after the terrain, and also very cutely, when it stops to take a rest, depending on how it's rotated, it calculates how much it needs to rotate until it can enter an animation where it sits down, and that and what it looks like is that the house kind of tiptoes around in a circle like a dog.
Like a dog. It's trying to find its place, going like, how am I going to sit here?
And that's not intended for a while, because we're so blind to it. We always like, we need to fix that. That looks janky.
Right.
But then it's like, it made it into the game. People are just like, oh, it's like a dog. That's
so cute. It's tiptoeing around.
What a beautiful little happy accident. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, gentlemen, I've held you here for long enough. It's a wonderful, absolutely incredible experience, and such an achievement, as I said, creatively, technically, culturally. It's just, I think the medium of video games, people have been knocking at this door, for a long time, like the claymation thing, and you've just hit a level of execution that, I don't think we've seen before, if I'm quite frank. So congratulations to both of you. Exceptional achievement, and I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting with you today.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. It was really fun.